All right, good. Welcome everybody today. Welcome midday here on BCB Live, the safest station in the nation. I have three great panelists today. We're going to start off with Officer Crockett. Tell us a little bit about yourself, sir.
Crockett. I've been employed with the City of Garland Police Department 30 years now. Last 13, I've been involved in commercial vehicle enforcement, certified in Part A, Part B, general hazmat, cargo tank, other bulk, and passenger vehicle inspections.
All right, thank you, Officer. And Roxanne.
Hi, I'm Roxanne Brown. I work with Ironwood Business Consulting, and I'm a DOC consultant, and I'm here to help out with any DOT needs.
All right, and Dana.
Well, good afternoon. I'm Dana Moore, and I'm Director of Policy and Government Relations for the Texas Trucking Association. Prior to this, I came from Texas DPS, where I served 36 years, and almost half my career was spent in the commercial vehicle enforcement, and particularly in the training of CVE regulations.
All right, hey. So we're going to jump right into it, and we're basically going to discuss a little bit about vehicle safety, vehicle out of service, what we can do about it, what we need to do going forward. Officer Crockett, you do this every single day. What is the main reason vehicles are placed out of service?
Brake system violations, sir. And when I say brake system violations, deals with your brake hoses, tractor protection systems, air loss rates, brake amount of adjustments, things of that nature.
And when we talk about those things, and we're talking about brakes, they can be placed out of service for many reasons, but brakes seem to be the main reason, right? And why is the brakes the main reason?
It's my opinion or my belief that the drivers, when they do their pre-trip inspections, that they're not actually going underneath the vehicles to check the brake adjustments. That's something that we do at roadside or when you pull into the scale house, when those violations will be found. So the drivers they're not going to know that until they're actually stopped, and we're telling them, hey, your brakes are out of adjustment, and this is going to place you out of service.
I got you. And Roxanne, when you are a DOT consultant and you're talking to your carriers and you're going in there, do you talk to them right off the bat about how important in all these DOT violations, how they can add up to their score, and because it's important, right?
Absolutely. One of the very first things I like to do is pull their CSA and go through all their violations with them. And then I like to really point out to them that we need to use this information, and you can look for things on both sides, from the carrier side and the driver side. If you have a driver, that's constantly getting the same violations over and over, and it's something that they should be catching on their pre-trip, post-trip inspections, then you need to bring that driver in, have a discussion with them. Are you not trained? Do you have questions? Are you not understanding how to do it? Find out what that problem is, because so many of them can be preventative. And then on the other hand, if there's multiple drivers getting these types of violations, then maybe you need to ask yourself the hard question: am I giving my drivers all the tools they need? Maybe I need to reevaluate my training program. Am I giving them the proper time that they need to be able to complete their inspections and not feel rushed? So it's definitely a very important tool.
Dana, I'm gonna jump right in here also with you, the Texas Trucking Association. Look, all of the thousands of trucks that were stopped during the last brake check, I think 20% or somewhere close to 20% of the vehicles were in some ways placed out of service. What are we doing as an association to better that, make that a little bit better, or understanding why?
Well, I will tell you, and this is something that here at TXTA we've been really supporting and pushing. And if you look at the violations, take a particular company, you look at their violations, and then you actually look at whether or not those drivers are doing a pre-trip and doing a post-trip. And I'm not talking about just going through the motions. I'm talking about actually doing it. If those pre-trips and post-trips were done properly, how many of those violations would never have occurred? And we believe it's going to be a considerable amount. Now, sometimes it's important to get these drivers on the program, so to speak. And what we've recommended is that not just a safety person, but maybe even the CEO, the president, the vice president, come out there at 6 o'clock in the morning with a pair of gloves and a flashlight and start helping the drivers check those vehicles. Be there in the afternoon when they come in. Help them again do it. That sends a message that the company is clearly behind safety.
Well, that's a great idea. And Officer Crockett, let me ask you a question. When you actually and you meet and talk to drivers every single day, how often do you find that they were just not knowledgeable enough in the violations that you're finding?
It's often. A lot of them, they know what to look for. Some drivers don't know. And it's at that time at roadside we take the opportunity to walk them around the truck and tell you this is what need to be looking for when you're doing your pre-trip and post-trip inspections. A lot of things that can be found roadside could be found doing your pre-trip inspection. That way you can alleviate some of those violations that are being found.
When you actually are in that training moment, I ask you this because I've had both kinds. I've had great officers that go around and said, "Hey," because I drove too. I've had great officers that said, "Hey, let me show you something. Let me show you what I'm looking at." And then I've had some just hand me a piece of paper. But I get it. It's the job, and it's my responsibility. But at the same time, how often do you find that the driver wants to hear, wants to know, really is interested in understanding what it is you're doing?
A driver who loves his job, who's a true professional, when you offer that opportunity, they jump on it, at the drop of a dime. So those guys who actually want to do the job right and doing it safely, they welcome that training.
Yeah, I agree. I think that whenever I had somebody go, "Hey, come here, get down here, let me show you something," boy, I was always interested to know as well. And I'm sure most of the drivers out there, Roxanne, when you're talking to, just like what Dana was talking about, when you're talking to the management of the company and you're talking about the training part, what is it they don't typically understand or that you seem to not get when you're talking to them about this kind of stuff?
It's always different. It varies. I have seen several clients that they're like, oh, they're professional drivers. They don't really need training, or they know how to do a proper pre-trip, post-trip. So I think it's really just having that conversation and really just doing the classroom training, teaching them, going out there, doing the hands-on the right way. Don't assume, no matter how long they've had their CDL, that they know how to do all these things. And then I always recommend to my clients on top of that is to, have the North America out of service book available to your drivers. Keep it in your, if you have a place in your office or a break room or whatever, but have that available to them. It's a great resource for them. It has pictures if they have other questions. And it's really just about making sure that when you get these violations, are you having a conversation with them? Or are you just looking and saying, oh, okay, I'm paying it? Are you conversating with them and saying, did you check this? Do you understand why you got it? And it's really about communication, honestly.
Yeah, I agree. Especially when you talk directly to them, Dana, when we're talking about the truck, the carriers, don't you believe, or expound on the belief that maybe it's important that the carriers, when they get drivers, they set a policy or a procedure in place in order to ensure that they're doing a pre-trip the exact same way all the time?
Absolutely. Now, carrier needs to be very careful with setting a policy, simply because in lawsuits, the plaintiff's attorneys will look to see whether or not that policy is being enforced like it's supposed to. But yes, I think it's extremely important that a carrier actually provide the training and be satisfied that that driver is equipped and ready to do the job.
Do you have officer, when you're talking to the drivers and when you're discussing to them about the violation and do they understand the true severity of what it is when you write them up, and that the points not only affect them but it affects the carrier, and all of these other things that go along with it? Do you ever get that they're not sure? I guess what I'm asking you is when you're dealing with the driver right there, do they ever fully understand the full impact of what you're doing?
Some do, some don't. That's when you have to take time to, to slow down and they try to explain to them, this is the violation, this is why it's a violation, and this is what you need to do, have this violation corrected or fixed.
Did you also when you're talking to them how do they typically drivers? And I'm just going to ask you right out. Besides the general public, drivers are a lot different that you deal with, right, officer? I mean, they're a whole lot different than the four-wheeler that you stop for a violation. Do you typically, would you not admit that they're actually a little bit different than the four-wheeler that you stop?
Yes, sir. The majority of guff I get will be from four-wheelers. Like I said before, your professional driver, truck driver, they are professional. And as long as I speak with them with respect, I get that same respect, back, and we can, carry on with the inspection at a smooth process and get them in and out in, 30, 40 minutes and they're down the road.
This is, and I'm going to ask you real quick, officer. This is just you're part of the job. I as a truck driver, you're part of the job out there getting roadside inspected. That's part of your job. I mean, not your job, but as a driver, they understand that you're part of the job that they do.
Yes, sir. A lot of your older drivers and professional drivers, they understand that. Some of the newer drivers come along, they don't. And those are the ones, when you have a problem, it'll be the newer drivers. Like I said, once you continue to speak with them like the professionals, like they're human beings, you can get through that process very smoothly.
Roxanne, when you're talking to the carrier and you're discussing to the carrier about all these steps and these things going on, and you're talking to like officer, these are things that they've got to be understanding, right? That those roadside inspections, all that stuff, that's all part of the job, right? Do you ever find yourself explaining to upper management that what the officers do is not something they hide from, but that's just part of what we do out there?
Yes, absolutely. And, and that's why I always try to point out to them that when you get a violation, obviously nobody's happy and wants to get them, right? But when you do, it's a training and a learning opportunity. And you need to build off of that, not just, it's a negative thing or just pay it and toss it aside. It's a learning and you need to really focus on that. And, and that's also why I tell them too, when you're doing your training, it's not only important to train the drivers on how to actually do a pre-trip, post-trip inspection. But in that training, we need to make sure they know what to expect when they get stopped for an inspection. How do they speak and treat? You need to set that as a standard for them at the beginning. When an officer approaches your vehicle, you are polite, you cooperate, you do what you need to do. You ask questions, answer questions. And it's just the whole thing that has to come together, not just the pre-trip, post-trip inspections, but they also need to be trained on what to expect and what the company's expectation for them to behave as a professional driver is from the very beginning.
Absolutely. And I like the idea that we, I want to hope that every driver out there understands the importance of respect and what we have. But Dana, talk to it. I mean, you're a former officer, and also you work with the TTA, the Texas Trucking Association. How are we, as an association and as a group, how are we doing on training everyone out there to do better pre-trips and have better safety records as an industry?
Unfortunately, I would say there's just not an awful lot of training out there. In fact, I think TXTA is about the only organization in Texas that's offering the kind of training that a driver needs and that a carrier needs. It's not really getting out very, very well because everybody's busy, and training takes time and training takes money.
What are some of the ways in which that the TTA offers training? Just kind of enlighten us a little bit.
Oh, thank you. In fact, next week I'll be at Odessa instructing a general hazmat class, but we have classes. We've we've teamed up with NAPNI, which is the national organization. And so all of our classes are run through NAPNI so that when a person goes through, they can be certified through NAPNI or they can be certified through TXGA or even both. We're going to have a director level training at least 3 times next year. We'll have a regulatory class. We're taking the hazmat class to Houston, and we may have other classes as well. And you can go look at the TXTA website and just keep abreast of the training as it's announced. And one important point is that you do not have to be a member in order to take the training. There may be a little bit of a discount in some cases, but for the most part, we want people trained, whether they're members of ours or not.
Just to help the industry. Officer, do you do training also? I mean, you've been doing this so long. I know you train other officers. Do you ever train in the community, or do you ever train out there? And if so, how can we get to those resources?
Yes, sir. Danny can attest to this. The DPS is real big on outreach to the trucking industry and community. So here, Garland, we try to follow that model. And if I get a company calls me and say, "Can you come out and speak to my drivers or put on a seminar?" I have no problem doing that. I enjoy doing it. Like I said, I love the job, and I want everybody to be as safe as possible. I don't know of an officer who's actually into this job, who likes doing commercial vehicle enforcement, who would not volunteer their time to go out and speak with the trucking companies, with church groups on various topics when it comes to the trucking industry.
You know, I think. Go ahead.
One of the things we do at Cedar Grove, we have a Citizens Police Academy, and you know, teaching the academy and Citizens Police Academy, it takes a lot of time. They have allotted me just only a 1 hour block to come in, and I set up the no truck zones for using our city vehicles, and it opens their eyes up to say, hey, you know, these are the places that I don't want to be around a large vehicle because that vehicle cannot see me. And you know, it's amazing that the responses I get from those regular everyday citizens when it comes to driving around big trucks.
Wow, man, I appreciate that. And let me tell you, Roxanne, when you're talking to these carriers and you're discussing with them, what are some of the pushbacks on training? I mean, obviously there's resources out there. We just don't always jump on them when we should.
Right. Yes, absolutely. So, lucky for me, most of the time, by the time they come to me, they're very open or looking for these types of things. But yeah, it's, you know, most people, it's, it takes too much time. I hire this driver, I need to get him in a truck, and or you know, we don't have the money to create a fancy training program or this and that. And so, you know, we just try to explain to them, we can help you with that, but also, you know, it doesn't have to be fancy, quote unquote, you know, just sit them in a classroom, a basic PowerPoint. It's about the information that's being given to them. And for the pre-trip, post-trip, honestly, the best training is out there with the truck, actually showing them how to go through it and walking them through the steps. So it is, we like to give them a lot of resources. I always preach, you know, about joining your local trucking association or other ones. And like Dana just said, you don't even have to be a member, but those are great training. I think it's just a lot of getting information out there to people that they do have options that don't have to necessarily cost them thousands and thousands of dollars. So,
absolutely, and thanks, Roxanne. Let me ask you. You deal with trucking companies on a regular basis, and we're sitting here talking about something so simple as out of service, but you know full well, and explain it if you would, the impact that kind of stuff will have eventually in a courtroom.
It's absolutely huge. People do not realize that until it's too late, till they're getting deposed in a case. But it's critical that every violation try to be eliminated. Now, we always encourage our folks to look very carefully at the inspection report. And if they see something that's not right, reach out to the officer, reach out to the agency. For our members, I do that routinely. If there's something that's wrong, it's incredibly important that these things be right when they go. because the attorneys, the plaintiff's attorneys, the guys we see on the billboards all over and watching and advertising on the TV and the news and the weather and everything, they're going to get these things. And they're going to use those violations against the carrier and against the driver as well. So it is important, very important, that we eliminate these violations, and then by eliminating it, we're all safer.
Hey, look, I want to thank each of you for coming out, and I want to thank all of you for what you do for the industry and how you make it safer, because I know each of you, interviewed each of you individually. I know how y'all make a difference in this industry. What we're looking for is how, and I'm just going to say this, I wish we had more of you out there doing it and doing it well. Officer, I know, you know what, I'm probably going to get you to come talk at a school if I can. and because I think the young people need to be reached, right? I mean, this is an industry that affects every single person out there, and I really think we're missing a big piece when it comes to young people, and I'm excited about everybody here doing it for the drivers and talking about the drivers. I want all of y'all to, thank for all of y'all for coming into the panel. We're out of time today, but I appreciate everybody jumping in and talking a little bit about out of service.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right, thanks guys. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye.